are recording. Yes, recording in progress. We are thrilled to have Dr. Kessler joining us this morning from Boston, as he's said. It's a pleasure to have you join our Be Well committee here in Indiana for a discussion this morning. As to introduce you, Dr. Brett Kessler, a general dentist in Denver, Colorado, is our ADA president-elect. Dr. Kessler has held several leadership positions within the ADA. He served as a delegate in the ADA's House of Delegates from 2008 to 2019, and has been a consultant to the Council on Dental Wellbeing Advisory Committee from 2007 to 2018. He also served as the vice chair of the Council on Dental Benefit Plans. In 2010, he received the ADA's Golden Apple Award, the highest award bestowed by the association for outstanding leadership in mentoring. Dr. Kessler served as president of the Colorado Dental Association from 2014 to 2015, and was instrumental in the formation and implementation of an adult Medicaid dental benefit in Colorado. Dr. Kessler speaks nationally on well-being and leadership topics to help dentists live their best lives. Dr. Kessler has received fellowships from the American College of Dentists, the International College of Dentists, and the Pierre Fauchard Academy. He has testified both before the U.S. Congress and the Colorado State Legislature in an effort to help enact laws that serve the profession and the public. He graduated from the University of Illinois at Chicago College of Dentistry in 1995 and completed his general practice residency at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in 1997. Dr. Kessler is also an accomplished endurance athlete and competes in events across the country. He has been married to his wife, Gina Kessler, DDS, MS, since 1995, and together they have 4 children. That's
it always sounds so surreal. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you again for joining us. I'd also like each of our attendees here this morning to get to introduce themselves briefly. So we'll go around starting with we'll start with Leslie Flowers, who has set up this interview for us and hosting our Zoom this morning. So Leslie, take it away.
Good morning and welcome, Dr. Kessler, to the Indiana Dental Association Be Well Committee. We are so happy to have you here. My name is Leslie Flowers. I am the Director of Communications at the Indiana University School of Dentistry. I'm also a wellness advisor and began the wellness programming at the dental school. I teach mindfulness-based stress reduction for Healthy IU, the employer wellness program, and I have a private practice as a health coach helping dentists be healthy.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Brett.
Good to see you.
Hi, Dr. Murphy. Oh no, Dr. Kennard. I can't even follow my own list.
Hi, I'm Lisa Conrad. I'm the current president of the Indiana Dental Association, and I'm a private practice dentist in Lebanon, Indiana. And then I was also on faculty at the school as adjunct for 7 years, and that's how I got to know Leslie so well. So I appreciate your being here with us and sharing this information.
Thanks, Lisa. So did you take over for Tom?
Yes. So
okay.
Tom's replacement. Yes.
Awesome. Congratulations and good luck.
Do you want me next then, Val?
Yes, Dr. Murphy.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Catherine Murphy, and I am an orthodontist by trade, but a holistic health advocate by passion. And I live in the Chicago area, so Northwest Indiana, and I practice in both Indiana and Illinois.
Hi, Catherine. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for all that you do. Thanks for being here.
Likewise.
Right. Dr. Johnson.
Good morning. I'm Christina Johnson. I am a general dentist. I practice on the north side of Indianapolis, and then I was also adjunct faculty for 10 years, but we've had some issues with daycare, so I've been kind of on the pause this semester, but hopefully we'll be back soon.
Hi, Christina.
Schaefer.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning, Dr. Kessler. I am a current fourth-year dental student at the Indiana University School of Dentistry. I am also currently serving as the president of the Student Wellness Coalition this year.
Awesome. Awesome. How many people participate in that?
So right now we've got about 6 people, but we're trying to grow the group a lot. So we've got a call-out meeting coming up in a couple weeks. So trying to get a lot more people to join us.
Awesome. And so I'm going to ask you some questions because I love talking to students. No offense to the rest of us here, but I'm at an ASDA conference here in Boston. So I've got students on my mind. So what kind of programming do you guys put together?
So we do kind of a lot of different things, but we have like a weekly yoga class that we do offered at the dental school for students and faculty. We offer like Who's Your Helpers events where if students are coming in to practice for projects or practicals, we offer some support and like some food. We have some fun trips planned like to Total Orchards, just kind of a fun mental break to get away from the stresses of dental school a little bit. Kind of things along those lines.
That's awesome. They're at University of Colorado, they have a group that's doing similar things. We should connect you to them.
Yeah, that would be
So,
great.
yeah, that's awesome. Good for you. Dental school's hard.
Right. And our guests from the Indiana Dental Association as well with us. Mr. Doug Bush.
Good morning, Dr. Kessler. Doug Bush. I'm Executive
Doug.
Director at IDA. I know your job title is going to change in a couple of weeks, so congratulations.
Sure is.
Look forward to seeing you around.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you too.
Ed.
Hey, Dr. Kessler, good to see you again. Ed Rosenbaum. I'm not an official member of this committee, but I am the staff in charge of the Wellbeing Committee with Candace Backer for our addicted dentist. And I think we're hoping that maybe the Be Well subcommittee will be some type of boarding process for those that needed more in-depth attention in their addiction. So we're finding it difficult to get, our participation is getting lower. The board does not seems reluctant to refer people to us. People do not self-refer as much as they used to. So again, we're concerned. We know the issues out there, and hopefully we can help those folks take care of themselves. So good to see you again, sir.
Thank you. Good to see you too, Ed. I've probably known Ed the longest of anyone on this call, probably 20 years maybe from
17.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably when you started. But yeah, Ed was a regular attendee at the ADA wellness symposium that we had every other year. And so he's heard a lot of probably the stuff that I'm going to say. And huge advocate. Thank you, Ed, for showing up here today. And some of the things that you talked about, I will address. I've had some really good inroads with how to boost membership in this esteemed society of people in recovery that are dentists. So
Thank you. Good seeing you again.
I'm Andrea New. I'm the Director of Volunteer Engagement here at IDA. I'm also the staff liaison for the Be Well Committee. In my nighttime hours, I am a crisis counselor. I've been master practitioner in neurolinguistic programming, and I've been doing counseling for 15 years now, and I realized that I can't make any money at it because I can't charge people to help them. So I usually take special cases, and I take the cases of all of our therapists and psychiatrists. So I'm the therapist for our organization as a volunteer.
that's awesome. Yeah, and we dentists are a special kind of crazy. So it takes someone who's got some experience in that to really help understand what we go through and help us through what we're going through. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Hearing everybody introduce themselves, it makes me even more proud of this committee that we've put together of dentists and students and other liaisons and our association support. I really am so pleased with what we are starting to do here in Indiana. I'm Dr. Valerie Martinson-Siebert, a general dentist in Northwest Indiana. I serve as the chair of the Indiana Dental Association's Be Well subcommittee, as well as our AIR leadership subcommittee. And I have a passion and a mission to bring mental health services and benefits to dentists across Indiana and across the country. I've met so many other people through organized dentistry who share a vision for caring for dentists in their practice so that we can better focus on caring for our patients. Dr. Kessler, you've certainly embodied that goal. You are our ADA president-elect, but in just about 2 weeks, you will transition to president of the American Dental Association. Can you share with us what your wellness platform will be for your tenure as president and beyond?
Okay, well, thank you all for being here, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for asking. I do want to say, please jump in and ask questions. Okay, this is a conversation. I don't want this to be a just a presentation. I want it to be a conversation. And so, as far as my presidency, Ray Comia, our executive director, asked me when I got elected as president-elect what my platform would be. And I jokingly said, this wellness thing has played its part. It's done, and he looked at me like this. I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. Absolutely not. Sorry, I got the sun behind me. It's going to move. There we go. And so wellness is first and foremost. I jokingly said, you got to dance with the date that got you to the ball. And when I'm for those that don't know me, I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. I entered dental school with a substance abuse problem. I left dental school with a worse substance abuse problem. I hit my bottom in my 3rd year of practice. And what I did was I did a general practice residency. I was kind of exposed to an addiction medicine doctor who talked about addiction in the medical fields. And I knew I had a problem at the time, but I didn't think it was not manageable. I thought it was manageable. But they talked about that every state had a well-being program that if you were in trouble, they can help you, guide you towards help with dignity. And so when I hit my bottom in my first bottom in 1997, I did make a call to the Michigan Dental Association wellness director. His name was Jim Oles. I think, Ed, you remember Jim. And he, although it wasn't a great phone call because, from an addict standpoint, he threatened my addiction and I wasn't ready to do what he said, but he did guide me to treatment and I went to treatment. So in 1997, I'll tell you my bottom, just so to give you a clarity of how crazy my life was. I'm a cocaine addict and alcoholic, and I convinced my boss in Central Michigan to take my staff to Chicago for an AGD meeting. I grew up in Chicago, and that's where my drug dealers lived. And I ended up dropping my staff off at a hotel for the night. I called my drug dealer, and I disappeared for 4 days, and on a cocaine and alcohol binge. And I hid in hotel rooms, and it was not pretty. And my problem at this point, I wasn't a daily user of drugs or drinking, but when I put the mind-altering substance in my body, this craving would kick in, and all bets were off on how long I'd be using, and forget about any kind of responsibility that was ahead of me, because my sole purpose in life then was to get high and get higher and get higher. And so when I went on this binge, it was the first time where I really lost control of it, where consequences were about to mount. I left these 5 women who worked for me stranded, and no one knew where I was. My family was looking for me in Chicago. And I remember my dad was looking in dumpsters in my old neighborhood. My brother and sisters were calling hospitals with John Doe reports, descriptions if someone came. Everyone thought I was dead. And I had been using drugs now for probably 15 years at that point, but it was my own little secret. And so nobody really knew what was going on except for one friend of mine, one high school and college friend who found me at a hotel. He tracked the use of my credit cards. This was the late 90s, so it was no internet yet. And it was really, he found me. And I was done with my binge, and he told me, asked me if I knew what was going on, and I'm like, no. And he's like, there's an APB out for you. You've been missing for 4 days, and police are looking for you. Stay there. I'll come and get you. And so he came to the hotel I was at, drove me to his apartment in the north side of Chicago where I used to live, and he told me that my family is in the neighborhood looking through dumpsters and things like that. And I told them I would tell them if I found you. So I have to call them. But just go in the back, sleep it off, and we'll get you through this. And something came over me at this point that I knew life was not going the way I had expected it to. And I remembered that addiction medicine doctor in my general practice residency talking about the wellness program. And so I told my friend, no, I think I need help. I had this like moment of clarity. And I made the call, and then I ended up going to treatment about a month or so after that. My boss was very gracious with me, and let me do what I needed to do to get better. When I told him about what I was doing, he jokingly said, well, geez, Brett, in the 80s, we all did cocaine, and we all, that was like the normal fare for dentists. And, because it was readily available through pharmacies, and we used to make anesthetic, with it. And what really happened is most of the dentists would just use it. And for whatever reason, my brain really liked it, and it became an addiction. And so when I went to treatment in August of '97, and I didn't fully understand the depth of my addiction. I felt that I could just control it, and if I learn everything about the disease, I didn't think it was a disease at the time. If I learn everything about addiction, that I would overcome and move on. Because up till then, I'm a pretty high achiever. I did well in high school. I did well in college. I did well in dental school. I think I finished 10th in my class. I had an amazing general practice residency, had an amazing job doing amazing dentistry. And I didn't identify with the people that I was in treatment with. They had legal problems. They had financial problems. They had major health problems. They were much older than me, just like this addiction medicine doctor described as a typical doctor who has an an addiction problem. And I didn't have any of those problems. I just felt like I can learn about the addiction, do my time, and then move on. And when I was discharged from the treatment center, they made some suggestions that I attend recovery meetings. I go to an addiction medicine doctor, and I do something to treat my addiction every day. And I just didn't listen really. And within a few months, I was back to my old ways, and it was scary. That was really the scariest point of my life, because I'd never failed at anything. And here I let everyone know that I'm going to treatment, and I was to get better. I thought you just get better if you go to treatment. You go to the doctor, you get better. And I thought I would overcome it. And then, within a few months, I was back to using. Was a very scary time of my life. Ended up hitting my bottom about 14 months later. So October 21st, 1998 is my sobriety date, and something I'm very proud of, and something I remember and think about every single day. What happened was I went back to Chicago again. And I was to attend one of my best friend's mother's funeral. She passed away. And so I was driving from Michigan to Chicago, and back then the cell service was not so robust. And I'm just going to illustrate this of the mind of an addict, what kind of things that I went through. And so there was a blank spot between like Kalamazoo and the Indiana border where there was no cell service. And that hour or so, I was just totally obsessing over, I should buy drugs. No, I shouldn't. I should buy drugs. No, I shouldn't. And, for an hour, just playing that through my head, I was by myself. And I knew that as soon as I crossed over the Indiana border, the cell service would come back on. And as soon as I crossed over that border, when it came on, I was unconsciously dialing my old drug dealer's phone number, saying, don't hit send, don't answer, don't, and before I knew it, I was driving to his house and buying drugs again. I could not stop myself. My brain was completely hijacked by the craving of wanting to do drugs. Okay. And So I went to, I picked up my quantity. I went to the wake of my best friend's mother's, service, and then I didn't, I went on a binge and disappeared again. And I kind of hid back, went back to Michigan, and my wife wasn't so happy with me, and she made an appointment at my treatment center for I guess a calling of calling me out, and and they helped me realize what I truly was, and that I was an addict, and I wasn't a bad person. I had a brain problem, and at some point in my life, drinking was social, it was fun, drugs were social, they were fun. At some point in my life, I crossed over this imaginary line where my brain, you know, t- you know, started exhibiting addictive tendencies. And so I like to use the metaphor of, you have a cucumber and you have a pickle, and it becomes marinated. Once it becomes a pickle, it cannot ever go back to become a cucumber. So my brain marinated in alcohol and drugs, okay? And at some point I crossed over this line, and when I cross over that line, I can never go back to any sense of normalcy. When the neuroscience of addiction is it basically lives in your amygdala, and it thrives on a dopamine hit, and drugs just throw dopamine out to your brain in massive quantities, and it's this feeling of ecstasy. And your first time you use it, it imprints things in your brain, and the addict will spend most of their life trying to recapture that feeling with similar drugs, different intake of drugs. And the amygdala hijacks your brain. You've got your amygdala, which is in your brain stem, right by your brain stem, and then you've got your prefrontal cortex right up front, which is your executive functioning center. And in addiction, the amygdala cuts off the all logic, and you're basically living to continue that dopamine rush. And so all logic gets thrown out the window. Um, and so once I started doing what they suggested, which is, going to recovery meetings, working a recovery program, getting an addiction medicine doctor, going to therapy, and my life got really good, really fast. And as long as I didn't drink or use, I continued on this trajectory to the point where I'm 2 weeks shy of becoming president of the American Dental Association. It just freaking blows me away. And I so many people to thank for that, and so many people who have supported me over the years, who have been welcoming, and I've had an up and down trajectory. Don't get me wrong, my life hasn't been perfect, but it did give me an inspiration that I never think I would have had I not gotten sober, had I not gone through what I went through. I as a dentist, as I said before, we're a special kind of crazy. And so I needed to be around other dentists who had paved that path. And so people like Jim Oles and, and many of his contemporaries who are gone now, paved the path for me to walk on. And, I kind of made it an imperative mission for me to make sure that path is wider for those that are coming behind me. And I've been involved with, hundreds of dentists who have experienced problems with substance abuse and other mental illnesses, physical challenges, and things like that, and been able to guide them in a positive way. But addiction is a disease, and sometimes even with the best treatment and the best support and all the best systems at your beck and call, sometimes the disease still wins. Okay, sometimes if you have cancer, sometimes, even if you're at the best cancer center, sometimes cancer still wins. And in addiction, active addiction, whether you're using or not using, looks a lot like abstinence, and it looks a lot like denial. And so people, who are not wanting to get help, thinking they can manage it on their own, it's a very dangerous proposition. And I know of at least 5 dentists who I've worked with that are dead, who died of this disease, and they could not find their way out. And that it never left me. I know hundreds that have died, in my journey, 20, almost 26 years of sobriety, but the wellness programs that we have at our states really are best practices, and they're 75 to 80% successful, meaning that person will stay sober during the time of their contract, and they get the tools where they end up staying sober hopefully for a lifetime, and they're monitored for their sobriety, and then they're monitored usually for their dentistry, that make sure that they're practicing at or above the level of the standard of care for that state. And the time, because it is a brain disease, it takes time for our brains to rewire. And it just doesn't happen in a 30-day treatment center. That, in my opinion, is a spin dry, basically, just to remove you from the substance. But the real work happens, in the first year to 2 years, where you dive deep into the causes and conditions of why someone would, choose to use in the first place, whether there's a choice or not. But it's usually some hidden trauma that they don't even know they're trying to satiate. And so it takes a lot of time to dig in there, and it's complicated to figure the way in. And so those that are therapists or have been in therapy, it doesn't just happen with one visit, it happens over time. And so it takes the 5-year program is really the best practice with the best results, 75 to 80% success rate. Those that try and get help on their own, 3 to 6% are successful. Think about that if you were putting a filling in a patient. If you had a 3 to 6% success rate versus a 75 to 80% success rate, you'd go with the 80% success rate every single time. But addiction and other mental illnesses tell us we don't have the affliction. We think we can overcome it. And I could not fix my broken brain with my broken brain. And I needed to get outside help and outside perspective. And I think recovery finally was possible for me when I humbled myself to recognize that this is way more than I can figure out on my own. I've never not been able to overcome something on my own. And I started listening to those that were trying to help. And that's the missing piece that we don't know how to get people to. Okay, when they're suffering from any kind of mental illness, if they're humble enough to actually listen to the professionals and how to treat it, there's a great chance of recovery, whatever that looks like. But if they're not open to it, that's that obstinance that we face with people who are active in their diseases. It comes off as like, well, I don't want to help you anyway. Then do you, and they get into trouble, and a lot of them don't make it. So. Anyway, I know, you had mentioned that, your numbers are down. People are afraid of getting in trouble if they seek help. And so my professional story was when I moved from Michigan to Colorado, I applied for licensure in Colorado. And I had to answer questions. Have I ever had a drug problem, alcohol problem? Have I ever been arrested? I've never been arrested or suffered any legal issues. And I had to answer everything honestly, and because I was moving to a new state that I really wanted to live in, and if I lied, which many people do lie, if I lied and got caught, I would never be able to practice dentistry there again. And so, but that's not why I did it. Honesty is part of the recovery program, and so I answered them truthfully. And they put me on probation, thinking that I was just going into the monitoring program, which I was welcoming. I was about 1.5 years sober at the time. And so, and I got into the monitoring program, and I got into practice, and, and life was great. But 6 months later, I get a letter from Michigan, state of Michigan. It was a letter of admonition because I still had my active license in Michigan. And it was a letter of admonition saying that I did not report to Michigan that I was in trouble in another state with another license. And I called them up and I said, well, I'm not in trouble. I just, applied for a license, and they put me into a monitoring program. And they said, well, probation is trouble. And so I had to pay a fine. It was like $1,200, and I paid Michigan $1,200. Then I called Colorado and told them I got in trouble in Michigan because I got in trouble in Colorado, but I didn't know I got in trouble in Colorado. And I didn't want to get in trouble in Colorado because I got in trouble in another state because I got in trouble in Colorado. You know, this whole circular logic. And as I thought about it, all I did was seek help. Why did I get put on probation? Why did I, let's say it asked about diabetes. And if I answered yes, I'm diabetes, do I get put on probation that I'm not checking my blood sugars regularly? I mean, it's really it's discriminatory. And then as I got my license in Colorado, I had to take a jurisprudence exam on the State Practice Act. And in the State Practice Act, I didn't think about this at the time, but if you were ever on probation, you could never serve on the State Board of Colorado. And I never had aspirations to serve on the state board, but I was like, after I got in trouble in Michigan, I started reading the Practice Act and I was like, this is bullshit. And that got me involved in organized dentistry because we started a sunset review process, which we, update the Dental Practice Act every 10 years. And I became part of the process. And that's where I outed myself for the first time to my colleagues. And I got nothing but welcoming and support from these people. And they fought for me and they fought for this cause. But I'll tell you, 25 years later, we still haven't been able to change that part of our Practice Act. Not that I have any aspirations to be on the state dental board, but there's still discriminatory processes and practices in state dental boards. Last week, I attended the American Association of Dental Boards meeting, and I got to share my story with them. And this was like I guess a professional highlight for me, being able to tell them, that there's a human attached to that license number that, can really use your help instead of, the threat of punitive measures. And it really landed. As I was speaking, I saw people wiping tears from their eyes, and I saw people asking their colleagues, "Do we have those stigmatizing questions on our licensing?" Yeah, we do. We need to change that. I kept hearing that. We need to change that. And so hopefully that will start to change. But when you change those questions, it's changing the Practice Act, and it's not easy. Lisa, I'm sure you know about, trying to create laws in Indiana. It's not fun. It's not easy. So we hope that we can, we're in the healing profession. We'll do anything possible to help our patients, with their teeth, but yet we shoot our own wounded. And some of it is totally unintentional, but I can tell you from sharing my story across the country, some of it is very intentional. There was a state that we testified at about 3 months ago where one of the state board members said, well, how can we keep track of the child molesters and the drug addicts if we don't have this question? And I'm like, you just classified me with child molesters. You know that, right? So it just is crazy, some of the the preconceived notions that some of our leaders have still. And as I don't take it personal. I've been around long enough, my skin is pretty thick, but I will not stand for it either. And so when I get opportunities like this to share my story, especially with people that are trying to expand the reach to help our colleagues, this is an absolute gift. So anyway, we're making changes, as president of the ADA, you'll hear a lot of that from me this year about trying to lower the stigma. I am the poster child of overcoming addiction, and I live in this realm where I feel like after being locked up in my addiction, I feel my brain is wide open to the realm that anything is possible. And so I hope that I can inspire others, and not just with addiction, but mental illness, physical challenges, any financial challenges, everything, that dentists face is, stressors that really hinder our ability to be at our best selves, to practice as our best, with our best skills to our patients, and then live our best lives. And, dentistry really can afford everyone a great life, but they need to take care of themselves. So I'm sorry, Val.
Yeah, that is inspiring to, know that a dentist can overcome so much and succeed, and then that you're taking what you've experienced to help other dentists so much. Yeah, and reducing that stigma, letting other people know that, other people have been through this. That is, I think, a huge part of what's going to help wellness among dentistry. And very inspiring to get that message out to the state boards so that they can reduce some of that stigma that they put on us as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a loved one that's going through addiction right now and is not succeeding. And yeah, your story gives me a lot of hope that, we will get through that and come out ahead in a better place. Thank you.
I hope so too. Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, without these professional programs, 3 to 6% is the success rate. And for a dentist, was your family member a dentist or a doctor or anything? No, okay.
No.
It's tough. It's really tough. And there's parity laws that that demand that medical insurance allow equal benefits for addiction as they do for other mental illnesses, and they don't do that. That's another thing that I fight for on another level. And the insurance will pay for maybe a 30-day treatment center, but it's the best practices, especially for dentists and dental professionals, is 90 days, and 90 days in a therapeutic environment with other healthcare professionals, specifically, if you can, dentists. So it's an expensive proposition for someone who whose life isn't going so well, and a lot of times they're struggling financially. But best practice is 90 days plus aftercare. And just to start to peel away the layers of to get down to causes and conditions and core reasons why that person is using in the first place. So, but it works if they can find that humility. And I'll tell you, the best thing that that I experienced, especially when I was in my addiction, especially in that year and a half where I was relapsing, my family never stopped loving me. Okay, they never stopped supporting me, and they always let me know it, even when I let them down. And so that's what we need to be for our colleagues, and we have to look at them as, they're wounded, they're sick, and there's a chance for them to get help, but they need to listen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So actually, can I dovetail on that?
Sure.
So, Dr. Kessler, what is your goal actually for the ADA Wellness Ambassador Program?
So the Wellness Ambassador Program is, I think, a brilliant idea that we started a couple years ago. Karen Foster from my district, who is a big suicide prevention advocate. 2 of her classmates had committed suicide, about in the last few years prior to the Wellness Ambassador Program starting. So she was the brainchild of this. We hope that the Wellness Ambassadors, first of all, everyone, I think it's a cohort of 10 people per year. We're in our 2nd cohort right now, or 3rd. I can't remember. 3rd. Okay. Sorry.
It just started the 3rd.
Okay. And so these 10 people in the cohort each have their own passion or niche that they want to bring forward for wellness, and I'm not just talking about addiction. There's mental illness, physical illness, all these different things, and they want to provide resources at the local level for their colleagues. But then we also, my vision of this is that these wellness ambassadors, that we have wellness ambassadors spread across the country, that they can be conduits for someone who's struggling. Even if it's not their niche of expertise, they'll be able to connect that person with proper resources that will match with what they're suffering with. And the more wellness ambassadors we have, so over the next, in 10 years, we'll have 100, we'll have hopefully 2 per state, and then these people will be well known at the state level, at the local level, as someone that is a safe person to talk to when we're struggling, because that's the key. That's the biggest barrier for dentists, is they don't feel safe to make these calls. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to look bad. They don't want to show any signs of weakness. And so we need a way that they can get help with dignity, and a way that it's promoted as a safe way to get help. And so we're just at the start of that. I'm sure that the Wellness Ambassador Program hasn't fully integrated in the states yet. I'd love for states to have, your Be Well program is a perfect example outreach of or outcast of this program, where now you have 11 people on this call or 10 people on this call that are quote unquote wellness ambassadors. Okay, you can answer that phone. But it's a cultural shift. And honestly, I see the younger dentists embracing these conversations much, much more than the older dentists. And because the younger dentists, so many of their friends and colleagues have been going through it, or they've gone through it themselves, or they've experienced suicides or deaths, overdoses. They talk about it openly in ways that I've never seen before, which is really refreshing. So that's what I see the Wellness Ambassador Program going. And another resource that the ADA is going to have, and this is something that we had in Colorado. I'm not sure if you have it in Indiana, but in Colorado, we started a program where if you were undergoing any kind of mental health crisis, that we had an online portal where you would get matched up with a therapist, a choice of 3 therapists, and you would get 5 free telehealth visits with this therapist. And I could tell you, I used it myself, and it was amazing. It was easy to onboard, and it was easy to contact the 3 that I was matched up with, and I chose one, and that person I still work with. Even as incoming president of the ADA, I still need tune-ups, and it's a wonderful, wonderful resource. I pay for it now, but it's not, it's an investment. It's not a cost. And so we're doing that on the national level with a company called Talkspace. And Talkspace is it's an app. And do you know about it, Valerie? Have you heard about it?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Yes. Very excited to hear this.
Okay. And it won't be 5 telehealth visits. It'll be 1 telehealth visit per month, synchronous, meaning you are talking with them on Zoom like we are now, but then they have unlimited contacts asynchronously with that therapist. And the studies show that, X amount of asynchronous equals 1 synchronous, and it's been beneficial. But they can also always use more if they need more. And that's just, therapy. And then if they need psychiatry, where they actually need to be medicated, they have access to those resources too. Andrea, I'll answer your question in just a second. But what's really cool about this is that, someone, if I'm suffering, I'll take my phone out and I'll open up the app and I'll do a self-assessment test. And based on the answers, I'll get a report that says, based on your answers, you may be suffering from depression. Here's 3 articles on what depression is and signs and symptoms and what the treatment looks like. And here's, some breathing exercises that I think will be really, impactful for you. Here's a online yoga class that we have every Tuesday, and we'd love to have you at that too. And we'll talk about depression. They don't diagnose, and then they match you with 3 different therapists, or they actually match you with 11, but they only give you 3, and that is local to your area that you can access. And so what I found is that dentists don't like to go to the doctor. They especially don't like going to therapy, because God forbid, who's in the waiting room when they show up there, and who's in the waiting room when they leave the closed door. Here they can do it in the privacy of their own office. They don't have to tell their staff, I need 3 hours to go across town to see a therapist and then an hour to recover before I come back to the office. So they could just actually do it, in the privacy of their own office. And and then there's an option to do it in person too. But I think the barriers to enter it is much lower if we can do it through an online portal. And then over time, you can keep taking these self-assessments, and that will show improvement or the need for more resources if need be. Okay. And so it's really exciting that we're going to be able to offer this as a member benefit. I think it'll start after the first of the year. So, okay, Andrea, sorry. You're on mute.
So my question was, as far as what is their privacy like when it comes to when you sign on and you say you need help? Does that mean you have to tell them who you are? I know with what I do, that was the big thing that we had to develop a separate where, I would need to be licensed in the UK, but I don't need to be licensed in the US. And so even though it's the same training, I was less scary for the attorneys that we would have come and request help, or the doctors that we would have. They would all come to me because as a licensed therapist, you're required to report certain things. And without a license, I wasn't required. It was at my discretion. But I also had supervision with psychiatrists and everybody who had the license. But so if you're not comfortable telling us who you are, then you don't have to tell us. It's an online thing. All I ask for is that I can see your face because will help with, but as far as who you are and your credit card being linked to your identity, it gave me a chance to get them actually into some more professional help. But without that being anonymous at first, a lot of them said there's no way they ever would have put their name on anything that had to do with something that had to do with, that kind of.
Right. So I don't think you need to link a credit card with this, so they could make up fake names, I guess. But it's not advised, obviously.
Right.
But whatever it takes to get them into into some kind of help, eventually the truth will rise up if they are to get better. I'm not sure. The same rules apply. If something needs to be reported, they're obliged to report. But that's where you all can kind of step in and help guide them, and reassure them that this is, yeah, you're gonna have to go through some things, but if you continue along the way you're doing, you're gonna die. Okay, and you could really hurt the patients, and you have an ethical obligation as dentists to, not harm the patients but help the patients. We had a dentist in Colorado who passed out over a patient while doing a root canal, and he overdosed basically on ketamine. And got taken to the emergency room, and the emergency room doc reported him, and he was so mad that he was reported. I'm like, geez, Tom, you should not be practicing. That's how crazy addiction is. They feel justified that they can do ketamine and then go do a root canal. Okay, no, you need to be arrested, really, for potential harm. But he didn't get arrested, and he's now 8 years sober, and he does what I do. He goes around and talks about it, and he helps a lot of dentists. And so, but I think the barrier, that's the addiction. That's what needs to be broken. Where so I use the metaphor that it's so humiliating. We come in with so much shame, and we have to shift that word from humiliation to humility. Same word root, but a very different meaning. And humiliation, shame, disgust, judgment, self internally and externally, where humility is noble. It's a firm understanding of, who I am, and what I need to do to get better. And so that only happens through cultural shift. That only happens through, the talks that I have with other people who have gone through what I went through and make it okay, and help me lead me through that fear, that there's a much better future on the other side of that, program that I have to report to.
Dr. Kessler, I have a personal question and then kind of a scripted question. Did you get your run? Did you get your run in this morning?
I didn't. I ran last night, and I did yoga and stretching and lifting this morning instead. So
well, that counts, because I was laying in bed at 7 a.m. this morning. I thought Dr. Kessler's already up and running and doing his day, and here I am laying in bed at 7 a.m. So you are
normally you're right. Normally you're right.
You're a hero to me. So what you've been describing, is that an employee assistant program that what you've been talking about, or is that different from an employee assistant program? And if it's different, is the ADA going to do that for its own staff or for its members, an employee assistant program? And if so, who pays for that? And I think Dr. Seifert may want to comment. I think Northwest is doing something along that line's already.
Yeah, in Northwest Indiana Dental Society, we implemented a member assistance program while I was president back in 2021. And I'm a huge believer in therapy and accessing help when we need to process things. And we can learn that humility that you're talking about while we work with a therapist to get to that point. And I think it all goes really hand in hand. So I'm very excited to hear the plans that you've been talking about.
Yeah, so the Talkspace is an app basically, so it's not an EAP. I do believe that the ADA has its own EAP for its employees.
Oh,
So that's that's part of their benefit plan. And people access it as they need it. This is just for members. It's a member benefit paid for by member dues. It will be free to anyone who needs to access it.
so that's in place now? It's like our
Where the contracts are signed, we're going to launch it after the first of the year.
okay, so our
So-
IDA members can be part of that with in 2025. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And so, the ADA is a complicated organization, as you all know. We have this new membership model pilot going through right now, and there's talk about using this as one of the adjunct tier benefits. And I'm like, okay, but if I find someone that needs it, I don't care what tier or what part of the country they're in, if they're in the membership model or not, they're going to have access to that. So it may not be readily accessible to every member at this point, but anyone who needs it can get it. And so now you know it, and let them know it if you find people that need help. Okay, and it will be paid for by our ADA budget. I'm not saying member dues anymore, but because we get a lot of non-dues revenue, so ADA budget.
Thank you.
I think it's a wonderful member benefit. Yes, Leslie.
It's great to see you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, strength, and hope related to your addiction. I've known you a long time, and I know that you are also really healthy in body, mind, and spirit, maybe because of your recovery. And I feel like we have a lot of dentists who may not be addicted, but they're suffering. They're suffering with burnout, anxiety, overwhelm. I coach dentists in my private practice for those reasons. What can you share about your personal journey in health and well-being beyond addiction that could be of service to other members?
Great question. And I just want to say, Schaefer, students will have access to this as well, to the Talkspace, because we know the dental students are suffering at a very high rate. Speaking of suffering at a very high rate, I think the latest data that we got was 82% of our colleagues are showing signs of burnout, experiencing signs of burnout. 82% of us. Okay, this is not just some fringe little group. It's most of us that are suffering some type of burnout. So, for about 15 years, I just focused on trying to help everyone with the addiction part when they hit their rock bottom. And then we started shifting in the dental wellness and dental addiction world. We started shifting our focus to like, why do we have to get them at rock bottom? What if we get them up here? Life's a sine wave. And what if we just get them on that downside of the sine wave and we can turn them back up to get up again, instead of having them reach rock bottom? And so we started talking about things like ergonomics. We started talking about things like, mindfulness training and destigmatizing other mental illnesses like depression, anxiety, burnout, things that are very prevalent in our profession because they're very prevalent in high achieving individuals. Okay. And so we don't like to show signs of weakness. We don't want anyone to think we're asking any questions or we don't know anything. And again, this humiliation and humility factor. And so what happens over the achievements, through the achievements that we achieve as high achievers, we develop coping mechanisms, and these coping mechanisms sometimes are very healthy, and sometimes they're not so healthy. And a lot of times the not healthy ones were imparted, where we develop them at a very young age as a response to some kind of, untoward life experience. And it could be a very big trauma, it could be a small trauma, whatever. But we developed these coping mechanisms that helped us get us through whatever we were going through at the time. But then it becomes part of our instinct and part of our, innate reactions to things without really thinking about it. And so, so we, so it's identifying the problem of I'm categorizing dentists in a broad way, but those are pretty common amongst our colleagues. And so what if we can catch them right on the downside of that sine wave? And so we start talking about what is really wellness, and you'll hear this a lot from me as well. And so, I look at wellness in 5 dimensions. The first is physical. Okay. And, you don't have to be an ultra marathon Ironman athlete to be in good physical shape. But I say every day, get your heart rate up some way. Push, stress your muscles, develop your ergonomics correctly for your, how you practice. Be mindful of the food you put in your body, try and get sleep, so that your physical wellness can be, has the best chance of being optimized. Okay, then I look at the second, which is mental wellness. And I'm not talking about mental illness, I'm talking mental wellness, like ways that you can keep growing your brain. Okay, so attend presentations, lectures, go listen to podcasts, read books, anything to keep your brain growing. You can combine the physical with the mental. I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts when I'm running, and for whatever reason, it really sinks in when I'm doing physical exercise at the time. So then emotional wellness, I say that, try and experience your emotions to the fullest extent in the moment. And if you can't, seek help, get help to do it. Because when we stuff our emotions, good and bad, it always comes back to haunt us. So that's really important. Spiritual wellness, I look at what, some people look at spiritual wellness as part of religion or how they view God or the universe, whatever. And I say that's part of it, absolutely. But I'm like, what grows your spirit? What lights your fire? What gets you out of bed every day? That gives you purpose. It doesn't feel like work. It's stuff you just do because you love it and you're so passionate about it. Find your spirit and grow your spirit. So put some effort into that. And sometimes you don't know it, but it's over time it comes out if you're intentional about it. Then the 5th dimension is social wellness. Who are the people you're hanging out with? Who is your tribe? Who are your posse mates? And you can have a choice to be in relationships with people, and those that are toxic, and I look at relationships as, if you're in a relationship with someone, it should make your world bigger. I'm not just talking about marriage or, partner or something like that, but your friends, every relationship I'm in, I want my world to be bigger as a result of that relationship. And if it's making me smaller, I don't think I want to be in that relationship. Okay. And so that's my judgment, but you have choices of who you get to hang out with. And, that can include your family, it can include friends, colleagues, your dental team. That one toxic person on your team that just, brings everybody down. You don't have to live that way. But all 5 of these, different dimensions, if you put some kind of effort into each of them on a regular basis, that's what I look at as wellness. Okay. Not my ideas. These are just an accumulation of things that I've picked up over the years. But if we can, again, get people right on the bottom side of that sine wave with a normal life, we can get them turned around, and they won't go towards those negative coping mechanisms that can really harm us physically or put us in a position where we're harming patients or the public.
Thank you.
Great question.
I have a question for you, Dr. Kessler. So you're talking a lot about, or we were kind of discussing what the ADA is doing, and it sounds like Colorado, based on what you're talking about, is doing some important things for members. What do you feel like states and/or components are doing well in the wellness realm, and what are things that are working, not working? How can Indiana better our state and then our components?
Some states have a very robust wellness program. Some states not so much. And some people judge it by the number of dentists that are under contract. Some people judge it by impact we make one-on-one with someone. And so I'd love to see, so addiction, mental illness affects 15 to 20% of the population. And so if addiction, so it's 15 out of every 100 should be, in these programs, that's never going to happen because of the cultural stigma involved. So I don't want to go by numbers as our marker. But I think it's, organizationally, it happens more. So organizations have been supportive of me. Okay, I just tell you from my lens. Colorado, Metro Denver Dental Society, put me to work. They go, we want you to help our colleagues. CDA Colorado did the same thing, and I still answer calls from dentists in my area to guide them towards help. So you need a champion locally, which you guys have. And then structurally, you have a committee. Most states don't even have a committee, and that's frustrating. So your leadership has projected that this is important to you, and as an organization, and I think the best results happen when there's a group of people who are supportive. But then the real success happens one-on-one when, culturally we've lowered the stigma so much where people are actually calling and asking questions. They may not be asking for help, but they're asking questions. And when they ask questions, we get to plant seeds, and sometimes those seeds can sprout and turn into something that is really beneficial. But a lot of times it may take years for that seed to sprout, or it may never. But but I think culturally, what you're doing is, I think, the best practice for the best possible scenario to help the not only your colleagues in the state of Indiana, but the communities that we're serving. Okay. One other thing that I didn't mention is that we've done studies of people who have dentists who have gone through, dentists and doctors who've gone through these recovery programs. They practice at a higher level. They get sued at a much less rate than the normal dentist, normal doctor. And so, because they're free, they're clear-headed, and they can connect with their patients much better. And so you're actually protecting the public by doing what you're doing in addition to helping your colleagues. So does that answer your question, Christina? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Kessler, I have a question for you. I know you kind of touched on this with the dimensions of wellness that you were discussing. But what are some of the most important preventative wellness strategies, in your opinion, kind of both on a personal level and a community, more macro level, like practice-wise, in
So
order to keep these things from happening?
So on a personal level, it's about living with intention. And so I've got these 5 dimensions. I want to put something in each bucket on a regular basis. And so, I as part of my recovery program, all of this stuff is part of, recovery from substance abuse, but it's not just limited to me because I suffered from substance abuse. I find that it's helpful to everyone. And so every day I wake up, I do some mindfulness exercises, meditation, breathing, journaling, and I just kind of plan my day out intentionally, and that's the key. And so that's what, and so then I may do it on a run. I may do it, just quietly in my hotel room. Or I may do it with a group of people. I may, so it all kind of bleeds in together, and many of those buckets get filled with one event or one exercise. And so structurally, I could tell you in Colorado, this, especially during the pandemic, we found ways for dentists to connect. Okay, so we'd have online chats like this, let's talk about stress. What are you stressed about? And everyone's freaking out, the pandemic, we're all locked down, and, it was a great opportunity. It was a safe space for people to share what's going on in their world. We did online cooking classes, we did online yoga. We did sipping and painting. I don't remember exactly. It was some cute name where they drink wine and paint together all online. So structurally, you as the Indiana Dental Association can find ways to create connection, because connection is the biggest, enlightening to the darkness. And then if you, it's funny if you read. So I'm a leader, and I try and bolster my leadership skills, and so I subscribe to things like the Harvard Business Review. Every single month, there's something in there about mindfulness training. Every single month, there's something in there about emotional intelligence and stuff like that. Stuff that I do on a regular basis. But these high functioning executives are all craving this missing piece in their life, which is this serenity that the angst that is there that causes depression, depression, anxiety, burnout, all these things. And so yoga classes are always at an all-time high. Spiritual retreats are at an all-time high. It's just people are craving it. So you as a society to put together ways to connect with positive interactions is invaluable to this cause. So what you're doing at school, Schaefer, I mean, that's why I asked, because that's exactly what you need to do structurally to help your colleagues and make it okay for people to come.
Thank you.
Dr. Kessler, thank you so much for sharing your story, and your success gives us hope that treatment can be successful. For those of us that have a loved one in addiction, obviously your wife played a big role in keeping things together. What was your wife's role in your recovery and keeping your family together?
Yeah, so she qualifies for sainthood on many levels, as I put her through the ringer. And even though once I got sober, I wasn't better yet. And my relationship primarily was with substances. It wasn't with her. And so I had to relearn, how to be in a relationship with someone. And so she was very patient and very gracious with me to give me the space I needed to define myself. So, if I can love myself, then I can be, a partner and, love her and my family. I've got 4 kids, by the way, all born after I got sober. They never see me drunk or high. But they have seen me be an asshole more than I care to admit, because that's life. But I could tell you that my recovery program has made me, given me the opportunity to be a really good parent and a really good partner to my wife. As I mentioned before, the best thing that you can do if you've got a loved one or someone you care about who's suffering like this is just keep being there for them, throwing out love darts towards them. That was so crucial to me. And and then she attends recovery meetings with me sometimes, and my kids do as well. They've learned about it from the beginning, and we were never shy about it because there is a genetic component to it. And we want our kids to know that their predisposition is much higher. And it's been wonderful. But it's hard. It's hard to be in a relationship with someone who's suffering from mental illness or addiction. It's really hard. And so my advice to anyone who is in that position, to take care of yourself first. You need to be, to be able to process the traumas that you're going through in this relationship. And then if that hard decision comes where you have to leave that relationship, that's also an option. I'm not saying one or the other, but you have to take care of yourself. So you can be there for that person. And sometimes leaving is the best thing you could do for that person and the best thing you could do for yourself. So, I'm lucky that, my wife stuck it out with me, and my family never wavered with their support of me, but I know lots that it didn't work out for. But it was necessary. So, and I'll say again, with the 5 dimensions of wellness, all of those help you be present in every situation in your life where you can make emotionally intelligent decisions, and not let the emotions drive the decisions you have to make. Okay. And I say this, that you are your most valuable asset. You must take care of yourself as such, because without you being well, you can't be at your best self when the world needs you, wants you to be at your best self.
So, Dr. Kessler, were you married? Well, you shared your lowest point with us earlier. Were you married at that point in time?
Yeah.
That is an amazing woman.
Yeah.
I will say that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Like I said, qualified for sainthood. Um, it's I'm a handful. Trust me. Even today.
So, Dr. Kessler, I have a question. In hindsight, looking back, were there things that maybe your wife noticed before you did, or things that, someone who is kind of also in, if I love someone, I may be a little bit in denial of their problem as well. Were there things that she noticed before, the problem became really bad that, would be some sort of a way to help, our members, loved ones, or even teams to say, hey, maybe I should check in with this person a little bit more often, just little things.
Mhm. So a lot there. So denial is really a big part of the addiction. It's also a big part of the family disease. And my wife had no idea about the amount of drugs I was doing. She just thought I was sick a lot. Okay. She really had no idea I was doing drugs. And the addict is very, very good at hiding their drug use. And it's by design, it keeps it going. And so she just knew I was sick a lot because when I'd binge, I would then, be detoxing for a couple days. And I'd fall asleep because I hadn't slept in 4 days, so, narcolepsy, I called it. And, so it was, it permeated. And in my own denial, as was mentioned, I'm an endurance athlete and I would, do triathlons, and while being in active addiction, and I would cross the finish line and I would say, well, addicts can't do triathlons, therefore I'm not an addict. And that it took me a couple of years of sobriety before I started getting back into some of these endurance things. But the denial is a big part of the family disease. And so if there's what people say and then the energy they give off. Okay. And you can tell, okay, you can tell when someone's full of it and when they're not. And no matter what they say, the energy they give off will really tell. And we're keen to that. Sometimes we can't always deny it, but we know something's not right. And so if you're ever concerned about somebody, the best thing you can ever do for that person is say, I'm concerned. Okay, I'm really worried. Okay, you're not, it seems like something's, bubbling under the surface. You're not showing up like you used to. You're not happy. And I miss my friend, or I miss my, the person that you were a couple years ago. And I'm here to help. What can I do to support you? Okay, not fix, support.
So, Dr. Kessler, I guess I'm a little confused. When you were actively participating in this, did you ever have the fear of getting caught, or were you constantly thinking, I'm better than this, they're not going to catch me, I'm so good, nobody, I don't have any fear? I would have a fear of getting caught. That is one of my motivators. Was that not a motivator to you?
Absolutely. So many things that I could have gotten caught with. When I purchased the drugs, am I going to get arrested? Am I going to get stolen from? Because drug dealers don't have the integrity, and they're not a regulated profession. Let's put it like that. Okay, there's no quality control of the drugs that I buy on the street. It was just all these things that, were driven the fear. And then when I had the drugs, and I'd drive to where I was going, what if I got pulled over? What if, they found it and they searched the car? And then during the use, if if I got caught, fear permeated this whole this whole scenario. But again, fear lives up here in the prefrontal cortex, and the amygdala overrides that. The pursuit of that dopamine fix hijacks the brain to get its fix in any way, shape, or form, and protects the ways that you can get it. That's the insanity of the addiction, because it's truly insane. Because no logical person would go put themselves in so much jeopardy and with so much to risk and so much to lose, but yet still justify it as normal. Is something that's normal for me. But then take that mindset away. And, in my case, I was able to be really successful in things, You know, I didn't get sober and say, I'm going to be president of the ADA sometime. You know, that's not what happened. Okay. But I was, you know, like I said, I got inspired, and most people who do find that humility and do come out of that, you know, it's like we're on a bonus time. You know, every day is, you know, I should be dead. So this is a bonus day for me. And I treat it as such. And so I, you know, maximally contribute to the world in my own unique way, like you all do. But I do it out of design. That's part of my recovery program. It's part of my recovery treatment that I have to be, because I'm not the same person I was 26 years ago.
Hard way to live. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Dr.
you.
Kessler, if I could, you mentioned, being there as the family member or the friend. I've always struggled with at what point does the tough love component come into this, where they do recognize that you've got a problem and you're denying it. The parent that changes the locks on the doors or hangs up on that 3 a.m. call, or the colleague that says, you either get help or I'm calling the board of dentistry. Yeah. How do you make that judgment between positive support versus that tough love?
Yeah, that's a really tough question to answer, because everyone has their own threshold of what they want to put up with. And so what I've had to do it with people in my life, you know, I said, you know, I will do whatever I can to support you in recovery, but I will not partake in your demise. I will not co-sign these behaviors to your demise. So, you know, people would ask me, you know, lend me money, let me sleep on your couch, let me, feed me, blah, 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 you know, and so I put, you know, boundaries on what my threshold would be. Okay. From a professional standpoint, though, you did ask about, you know, if you don't do this, I'm going to report you to the board. That's the biggest ethical question that I seem to come across on a regular basis from people who are calling me. You know, I'm concerned about our colleague who works down the street. I know he's buying drugs, and he's practicing. And, you know, the ADA Code of Ethics says that if you know of someone who's practicing impaired, you have an ethical obligation to report that person to the well-being program, not the state board, the well-being program. And so, you know, but therapists, like what Andrea mentioned, you know, if someone is practicing impaired, they have an ethical obligation as part of their license to report them to the board, because we're there to help the public. So in my experience, when I get them to report it to the well-being program, then we are able to gently guide them towards help. And you know, and when someone goes into like a treatment center with a healing mindset and a growth mindset versus an angry mindset, the prognosis is much, much better. And so we try and warm the chair for them to be open to go through what they're going through. But I know dentists who would directly send them to the board, you know, and because they're sick of cleaning up their mess. And with poor patient care and hearing the patient complaints from the person down the street. So it's a personal thing, but you have to weigh from a dentist standpoint, you have to weigh are we helping the dentist and balance it with, we have to make sure that we're not hurting the public. Because I can tell you the times that our wellness program didn't act, and push someone towards treatment, it turned into something ugly, turned into a DUI where they killed somebody, or turned into a national news story about reusing needles in oral surgery. And that makes the whole profession suffer, and we lose trust as a profession when we do that. So it's
I'm
tough.
sure you've met Candace Backer, who's the counselor that we use for our well-being committee.
Mhm.
And it amazes me her ability to be kind and understanding and patient, and then is hard-nosed. I mean, she will not be lied to, and she knows when somebody is dodging her. And she that ability to be able to adjust to what the situation requires.
Yeah, it comes from experience, and it's also part of a gift too. But she knows an untreated addiction will lead to death and major harm to those around that person. And it's a lifeline. It's not a self-help intention. It's this person's going to die or they're going to hurt somebody really bad.
I do think there's a tendency among dentists to talk about the person they're concerned about, but not talk to the person that they're concerned about.
Yeah. And that's where you all can really help change that paradigm and open up the cultural conversation to, this person's sick, they need help, and the programs that we can put them in will, 80% of them are going to do really good. And so, but it's I've been talking about this for almost 26 years now, and I love it that we're having these conversations in this fashion that weren't even available 10 years ago. So kudos to you.
It's very encouraging to hear success stories. And I know, from my own experience, I have utilized help from therapists and addiction and intervention specialists to help with my loved one situation. And the more resources and the more information we have out there, the better we can help each other. So I really look forward to everything that we can do in Indiana to deliver education and awareness and services to address wellness. With your upcoming presidency, is there anything that we can do to help you with your wellness initiatives or what you want to do for the country?
Keep doing what you're doing. Honestly, keep doing what you're doing. You always been forward thinking, and the several years I've been working with you all, you understand it, and just keep showing up and keep spreading the good word, and the best people you could put on your committee are the success stories. So people that have gone through the program, get them involved, because they will be the accelerator to lower the barriers for the stigma. I know we lost a dental student a couple of years ago, to suicide, and we need to make sure that the students know that help is available, Schaefer. And you've got 9 people in this Zoom call that will drop everything if we knew a student was hurting. Okay, so that's you're our future, and we want to make sure that you're well supported.
Dr. Seaver, I just add one more question. Dr. Kessler, I've been begging some of our dentists that are in recovery to share their stories, much like what you do. And they zero goose eggs to date on getting them to share. Is there, if I had them talk to you, is there a different approach I can do? Is there anything I can do to get our stories in Indiana out to our folks that need to hear our personal Indiana? And you can't force someone to share their story who doesn't want to share their story.
No, it's very personal. But again, there's the stigma around it that that really is the barrier. And the more that I share about it, hopefully it lowers the stigma and normalizes this as that I'm not bad, I'm sick, and now I'm well. I'm happy to talk to anybody if you think it would help. But it is a personal choice. And my decision tree was I was about 3 years sober, and I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Why am I so quiet about it? Why am I so ashamed of it? This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And so that's how that's the mindset I'm in when I share it.
Thank you. Again, you're a hero to me.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, and thank you. It was such a pleasure to be able to spend time with you this morning and have you share your story and your goals for dentistry and all the things that you're supporting and doing actively. I know in Indiana and with our Be Well subcommittee, we are really excited to move forward and do everything we can here in Indiana to bring mental and physical health to our dentists, and everything that you are going to be doing during your tenure as president. We look forward to seeing your success and helping support it and everything you'll do afterwards as well. So
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
Can I get a quick picture of all of us?
Sure.
Oh,
Okay, let me see. That always gets a little bit of my phone in there, but that's okay. Okay, everyone smile. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Dr. Kessler, for sharing and being such an incredible leader.
Thank you. You all inspire me. Thank you for doing what you're doing. The advocates are so important, and man, it's a breath of fresh air, and you guys got me pumped up. So thank you. I'll hopefully see many of you in a few weeks. If not, I'll see you somewhere down the road. If you want me to come to Indiana, I'd love to. Please send an email, and I can get on my schedule. We'll be putting the schedule together early November. So if you can send me an email, I could, send it to Valerie, and she can put it in the list of places I need to come, because I'd love to come again.
We'd love to have you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend in Boston.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Be well.
Bye, Dr. Kessler.
You like that? Be well. Be well.
Yes. Be well.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.